Welcome back, everybody, to DBO. On today's episode, I fix my own catastrophes. So here's the deal. As you may or may not remember on the previous episode, if you've been following along with this build, pretty much finished the swap and then went to go drive it, and the gas pedal immediately snapped in half and the shift linkage was too loose to even remotely begin thinking about using. Oh, also the brakes are just, here, matter of fact, let's go ahead and take a peek at the brakes so you can just see what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm sure you can see and hear that. On the brake subject, all the parts for the brakes will be here tomorrow, which we're going to continue filming. We don't always do this in one day. Brakes will be here tomorrow, but today, Hamish and I took a trip up to Fort Collins and picked up a bunch of fancy parts. So we got the billet shift cup, we got the new shift ball, just so you can visualize it. This is how this works, right? And these ones were super sloppy and worn and just not functioning very well, as I'm sure you can tell by just looking at them. So replace both of those. We got a new roll pin in. We got a new carrier bushing right here. We got a new carrier bushing right here, believe it or not. And then all the way up in front here, you can see we've got new, I guess, slide bushings, guide bushings, whatever those are. Those are new as well.
Bushings. Yes.
And then Richard, about 12 years ago, he thinks, replaced the pivot cup up there, which actually looks pretty good, so I didn't touch it. So now this van has completely new front to back, all shift components. So now I should actually be able to get it into reverse. Oh, and additionally, so this is basically the linkage, right? This clicks into the bottom of the pedal, and then it goes through the floor, and it hits this little wobbly canter lever thingy. Anyway, point is, you can see this one from 30 years of being driven just snapped right off literally the second I hit the gas. It just broke right off. So, no moss on that guy.
Nice shot.
We're gonna install this one. Thank you, Kobe. Theoretically, when the brakes show up tomorrow, we can drive it. We tried to kind of test the brakes. It did not feel like they were really there when we tried. I mean, it'll stop the car from rolling, but like from like driving,
to what end?
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to attempt to take this thing for a drive with a fresh motor swap and all that stuff. So I think we're gonna do the brakes first tomorrow. It should be ready to rock. We've already test run it quite a bit. I already burped the crap out of the cooling system, which, by the way, if you guys are doing this, that is a total pain in the ass. These lines go from obviously the front of the car all the way up through the radiator, all the way back to the motor. There's a lot of coolant. I put 5 gallons in and it still wasn't full. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna get back to work doing this gas pedal dealio. I'm gonna do some brakes and hopefully do a little bit of testing and tuning and driving. So anyway, stay tuned. If you guys haven't seen this, this is gonna be my fun today. This right here, you're like, that looks like a rear, because it looks like it's got a drum in it. Wrong, this is a front. Volkswagen and some other companies, I've been informed by Chris, like Honda, use a rotor over hub style, or sorry, yeah. Anyway, point is, wheel bearing race goes here, which basically means that not only do I have to take this front apart, but I also have to take the wheel bearing apart, arguably. So I think this is gonna be a bit more of a chore than I was initially anticipating, which sucks, but I guess I'm going to start while I have stamina on the front, and then we'll work our way back. So we'll see how that goes. Ready?
Yeah. That can be done in editing.
Chris? What? I'm hoping this just... Oh. In fact, 1, 2. Oh, sploosh. All right, so here's the deal. Got this guy on. I believe it's adjusted semi-properly. We still need to fill it with grease. I'm not gonna put the cap on it until we get the car on the ground. You wanna put the weight on the car and roll it back and forth a couple of times before you final torque this. There's a very fine adjustment that you need to have. You want to make sure that it still moves nice and easy, but that there's not any play in it. And also take in mind that the wheel bearings will expand when they get hot. Anyway, so moving on, I thought that we were good, and then I went to go change the pads, and of course, this is not a two-piece caliper. It is a basically mounting bracket built into itself. You cannot, or you have to hammer these pins out and I don't believe that I got the hardware when I ordered all of my brake parts. So I think that I'm going to need to get a hardware kit for these, because I highly doubt I'm going to be able to reuse these super mega ultra duper ridiculously crusty pins. Okay, so these brakes have a pretty interesting design I've never seen before. It's kind of like a concrete anchor but reverse. So instead of keeping it from pulling out, you hammer it in and it friction seals itself. So you've got the end that goes in this side. If you're changing brakes on a van again, you need to hammer them from the outside of the van towards the inside. And what that does is it, instead of, well, see, these pins are pretty jacked, but if you want to hammer it this way, it spreads this collar and makes more of a friction fit as it tries to go further in. But when you hammer it the other way, the collar goes up, it's allowed to close, and then the whole pin can come out. So when you're doing your brakes, replace these, especially if they look as rusty as these ones. This van definitely spent some time in the old snowy region of the US, somewhere. Alright, so you know your wheel cylinder is bad if it can do this. Watch this. Oh, well, I squeeze it here. Watch, this one will do it.
Ooh.
Oh, that's not good. I'm ordering new ones. Estefania's helping me out. This right here is your wheel cylinder, right? So it bolts in like this. You got your bleeder screw. These two right here act against your shoes. These actually spin, so it'll go boop. Those, so when you press on the brake pedal, it applies pressure to the center and it expands both of these pistons outward so that your shoes go like this. But since our audience is primarily 25 to 34, chances are most y'all know. So I'm preaching to the choir. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up, get back to work. Crab people, walk like crab, talk like people. Anyway, continuing on. Now, if you haven't done drum brakes, they're a lot of fun. And I'm being very facetious, they're not fun. Lots of springs. You need to make sure you A, take pictures before you take things apart. B, it helps if you go out to Harbor Freight and spend the $15 that it costs to buy all the shoe hardware tools, which is very helpful. There's plenty of DIY drum brake stuff on the internet, so I'm not going to bore you guys to death. Rather, what I'm going to do is take everything apart, clean everything, replace the bad parts, put the new stuff on. And then maybe, just maybe, we're going to be able to drive this thing. So cross your fingers. I can't. Boop.
If you're watching right now, you should get a beer. And then I'll be able to record ambient sounds with the...
She's a happy girl. We're good. Gotta be very careful when you're doing these, because those compression fittings, those flare fittings, are really easy to cross thread. A lot of times they're made out of aluminum on both sides, so it's like really easy to strip them. So if it doesn't go in like 3 turns with your fingers, don't use a wrench. Don't you play with games with me. There we go, now we're on. Drums. Fucking call me, I don't know, who's a famous drummer? What's the guy from Lars Ulrich?
I know a guy from New Zealand.
What's the guy from Rush? He's really famous. Neil Peart. There we go. Call me Neil Peart, baby, because I'd be drumming. Alright, now that we got the drum all back together and it's on and the shoes are on and all the springs are on, keepers, all that, we need to adjust it. So basically the way that you do this is you adjust it so that it can't spin, right? And then you back it off a couple of turns. Usually like 2 to 3 to 4. Depends on, you know, you don't want the shoe touching the whole time, but you want it just a couple of thousandths off of that brake drum. Okay, so I have the spreader bar, adjuster bar, adjusted pretty close to where I want it. And you can tell because it's got a decent amount more friction on it. Hamish can verify, he felt it as well. So at this point what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna back it off probably 2 clicks, 2 turns, 2 throws of the screwdriver. As long as your metrics are the same and you know kind of how much it adjusts it, you'll be okay. But the idea is that you want it to have little to no drag off brake, and then when you pull the handle up, you want it to grab it at about click 2 or 3 as you're pulling the handle. So that's what we're shooting for. Past the point of no return. We need a montage. So this drum was totally, or the wheel cylinder, as you can see, totally zit-tastic as well. You can squeeze these and freaking fluid comes out of them. So these seals on these cylinders are freaking blown, dude. Luckily, I am Speedmaster Flex, and I've already pretty much almost got this one assembled, or disassembled. So we'll have it back together lickety split. So first you hook in the e-brake cable, and you loop this up. Damn, I'm good at this. There we go. Got on. Okay, and with the tightening of those two bolts, that concludes the rear brake job. Surprisingly, it was far easier than the front, which I would not have guessed, seeing as these are drums and those are discs. But on this car, nothing is easy, as long as you got the right tools. Not too bad at all. Anyway, okay, so I'm probably gonna be calling it for the day until the parts come in tomorrow, and you're magically just continuing watching and about right now. All right, so front brakes, as you can see, well, at least one out of two, they're both installed, but only one of them is grease. I made the mistake of thinking that this fitting right here was for greasing the wheel bearing. It is not. It is, for some reason, connected to this. So I think that's probably the Speedo cable, I think. But now I have to remove this rotor and grease all of the bearings before I put it back together for obvious reasons. Don't want bearings exploding. Also, these little Johnnies right here were what I was waiting on to replace the hardware that was all rusted out. So as you can see, these actually have like collars that are intact, nice pins, springs. So basically all I have to do at this point is pack the wheel bearings, adjust the bearing tension, and then we're gonna bleed the whole brake system after the front calipers are installed, and then it should be drive time. Freaking finally. Got bearing grease, got a grease gun, all with the same kind of grease in it. So we're going to be greasing some bearings.
Rattlesnake.
Snack. More like battle snack.
So what's the process here?
Process is take lots of grease, insert into bearings. So I'm just gonna lather this on nice and deep like. I should have bought the bearing packing tool is what I should have done to avoid having to do this, but it's okay. And then I'm gonna take a bunch of this. Just really get it in there, you know? One thing a lot of people don't realize about grease is it actually turns into complete liquid when it heats up. So it is important that you get good coverage, but at the same time, once the bearing starts to get hot and it starts to liquefy that grease, it'll get into all the little nooks and crannies. You just want to make sure you have good initial coverage. And remember folks, to regularly pack your bearings is part of your service maintenance items. Now for the insertion. Ooh, that was close.
Almost lost it.
Almost dropped the bearing on the floor. But didn't, so we're good. There we go. Boom. I, quite frankly, could not find any official torque spec from Volkswagen, so the methodology here is you get it so there's no slop in the bearing when it's weighted. You set it on the ground, you roll it back and forth a couple of times, you check the play by literally just pulling on the wheel and seeing if you can feel any play in the wheel bearing. So I'm not going to put the caps on these until we've got them adjusted. I'm not going to put a tiny bit of play in it, but probably what I'll do is I'll just take the play out of it, if that makes any sense. So I have a lot of beefs with this brake design, but the one beef I do not have is how easy it is to change brake pads on these. Literally slide them in, put the pins and springs in it, and you're done. So bam, then you have spring and pin. Boop-de-doop. Shove those in there. You get the idea. Very easy to change brake pads. on this setup. I don't hate it. So rusty brake line strikes, and also stupid design strikes. Thought I was gonna drive this van out of the shop today, but oh hooray, the brake line broke. So that's cool. This car just keeps fighting, man. This is just goes to show though what happens when you leave a van, or any vehicle for that matter, sit for a very extended period of time. So, as you can see, I was able to remedy the brake line problem, which I was very worried about, but luckily AutoZone had a brake line that had A, the correct flare type on it, and B, the correct fitting ends on it, and C, it was the correct length. So it came straight, I bent it up, put it in, and it fits perfect. So we're good to go. Surprisingly, that was bullet dodged. We're very good to go at this point. Brakes are in, brakes are bled. All the new pads are in, new wheel cylinders are in, new shoes are in. We're like ready to go. At this point, I'm doing like pre-flight checks. I'm just lubing up the old throttle cable here, which actually I need to take the spare tire out for, but we'll do that here in a sec. Point is, this MFer is ready to rock, finally. It has throttle cable, it has working shift linkage, and it has brakes now, which are all very important in order to drive, so we're good. Yeah, I guess at this point, the Subaru swap is pretty much finished, so I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for your support. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Cheers.